Hello everybody and welcome back to another quick Dwarf Fortress tutorial. In this video we're going to be covering advanced world generation, specifically caverns. We're going to be talking about generating different types of caverns, we're going to be talking about the different parameters and how they affect caverns, and hopefully it'll lead you to being able to craft the caverns that you specifically want in your world. Let's dive in. So now that we're in a create a new world screen, what we're gonna do as always is go to detailed mode. Now up in the top left here, we have our presets. This is the large island region, which is the default one that it lands on. And of course we have normal regions and island regions. Now at some point I'll talk about generating different types of islands, but for this particular video, we're just gonna be using the defaults. So we're going to just go to a medium region so that generation is pretty quick, which gives us a medium-sized world, 129 by 129 width and height. So what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down to the kind of middle bottom of the menu here, where we see our cavern settings. So we have cavern layer number, cavern openness min, cavern openness max, but the first setting we're going to talk about here is the actual number of caverns. Now, if you decide for some reason you would like less caverns, I've heard that this can increase frame rate on lower end systems, but that might be old information. I honestly don't have a lower end system myself, so I can't actually test that. But what I can tell you is if you decide you would like less than 3 cavern layers in your world generation, you can lower this number. Keep in mind, if you set this number to 0, there will be no caverns whatsoever in the map, and this comes with a massive detractor. There will be no plump helmets, pigtails, or any underground crops that you can grow or cultivate in the world. So survival as a dwarf might be rather difficult, as you will need these to survive in most situations. So if you would like to try messing around with this number while you can, just be a little bit careful about setting it to 0. So if for some reason you would only like 2 cavern layers, maybe make them harder to find, something like that, you could lower this number to 2 as an example and have less variety in that regard. Now, the next 2 settings we're going to talk about here is cavern openness and cavern density. Now, cavern openness is a setting that sets how big and open the areas are in the caverns. Cavern density is what makes them maze-like. So by default, it just kind of scrambles the numbers. Sometimes you get pretty open caverns, sometimes you get really dense caverns, and these can change from chunk to chunk in the world gen. So when you generate the world and you burrow down, you may have a portion of the caverns that are really densely packed, and then some portions of the caverns that are more open. Now, there is a setting that I'm going to be showing you in this video which gets very wide open caverns, and then the inverse, but we'll be covering that once I finish going through these settings. Next is cavern layer water min and cavern layer water max. Now, if you would like guaranteed water in every single layer, you can turn this number up. But even if you set cavern layer water minimum to 100, there will still be some land. So even if you just say you want flooded caverns the entire time, you want to make sure there's a lot of water down there, keep in mind that there will be, at the very least, some land in each layer. It's not just going to be an open lake, even with the cavern openness set to the maximum. So keep that in mind. If you would like underwater lakes, which can be pretty cool, which I will generate in this video, I can show you that as an example. So then, of course, the last thing I kind of want to cover here is just magma layer. You can just say yes or no on this. I would leave magma on because magma is pretty important, let's be honest. So let's start fiddling with things. Something people have asked me a lot to do in a video is how to have big open caverns. So that's the first setting we're going to tweak here. So what you really want to do is you want openness to be set to 100, or let's just say, for the sake of this video, 85. So our maximum openness is 85, so these will be very wide open caverns, but won't be completely devoid of any supports. And then we're gonna go to passage density, and we're gonna set this to 10. So passage density is very low, cavern openness is 100. Now, in the next world gen, I will show you what this will look like if I simply crank these numbers all the way up. Let's start generating. There we go. World is now generating. Not too many rejections, which is good. We did get a couple, numbers jumping up a little bit. Nothing too out of the ordinary though. And it's generating with 29 rejections. Now, it's rejecting them because some of the worlds that were generated didn't meet the new parameters that we'd set. Of course, when you're tweaking the parameters, that's going to cause you to get rejections, because instead of it just generating a world with those exact parameters, it generates worlds until it gets those parameters. All right, so we're now in the embarking screen, and as you can see, we have a variety of nice areas that we could pick here. Of course, if you would like any of these save files, you can, of course, grab these in the description of this video. I will link that, of course, and let's jump into somewhere around here in this kind of edge of this terrifying biome. and I'm going to use some witchcraft to expose our caverns. Now this one actually generated kind of odd. It gave us a really kind of shallow world that doesn't actually go that deep, but I've used the reveal all command in DF hack and we're kind of peeking around a little bit. You can see that this is a very open cavern. I'm going to try resetting everything back to default, and we're going to do another generation round and see what we can get, but it is a pretty solid start. So I'm going to mess with a few settings here. So follow along with me a little bit here. Now, as you can see, the worlds that we were generating were kind of squished. There wasn't a lot of, depth to them. So what we're going to do is we're going to tweak a few settings. Z levels above ground. This is the minimum number of Z levels that will spawn above the 0 layer, basically meaning that the game can allow you to build taller by default. Now, by default, the minimum that it will allow is 15, but we're going to bump this up to 30. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Z levels above layer 1. So this means there is a minimum number of 5 Z levels that will show up before the first cavern layer appears. Now, none of this is going to specifically give us the maximum number of height, but it'll just make sure that there's some space between them. So I'm going to just say 10 here. Now, the second layer, I'm going to bump up to 20. And the third layer, I'm going to give us just an extra 10. So there's going to be some guaranteed space between these. Then layer 4, which is the lava layer, we kind of want to make sure there's going to be a little bit of space between that and the third cavern layer, so I'm just going to say 2, and don't worry about that last one. That one's spoilerific. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back up to our cavern settings, and we're going to do something very similar. We are going to give us the cavern layer openness. We are going to increase that to 100. Cavern layer density, we're going to decrease that to 10. And we're going to leave everything else at default. This is, of course, going to be a small region generation just for speed of generation. And then the last thing we're going to try and do is some lakes. So to recap, the one major change we've done between the previous generation of us messing around with the openness of the caverns is we've made sure that there are some guaranteed Z levels between the cavern layers themselves. After 71 rejections, the world begins to generate, and we're powering through the decades. And let's see what we've ended up with. So we're going to settle, I think, close to these dwarves right here. All right, so we've got kind of our lovely little snow-covered, steepish area with a little stream kind of running through it. I think there should be a road here somewhere. Yeah, there it is. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to reveal the map, and we're going to see what we've got. But first, I'm going to check the Z-level count. We've got up to 79 above, so that gives us a lot of space to build. And we can go down all the way to layer 69, which isn't super deep, again. However, it is a significantly deeper amount than before. It's about 110 Z-levels down. Still a little higher than I would like, but this is also a pretty high elevation embark, so let's begin digging. So we've used the reveal command in DF hack, and this is what our parameters have landed us with. A very wide open cavern with also a road running through it, which is interesting. I didn't know that roads sometimes can have roads underneath them. For those of you wondering about these roads, by the way, this is a lot more of a Dwarf Fortress adventure mode feature than a fortress mode feature. However, it is really cool to run into them when you see them. The second cavern layer is also significantly more open than they generally end up. I like it when there's a little bit of supports in them. They kind of look weird when they're just completely open like those first few worlds I generated. And honestly, I think that the result in this one is much cleaner than the previous results. Let's go down to the third cavern layer. Now this one actually has a very large opening leading down to the third cavern layer, which is a really nice effect actually. And also the third cavern layer has a similarly open effect, and I think looks really, really nice. So, as I said at the beginning, we're going to try some underground lakes, so that's going to be our final experiment. So once again, I've set up our Z-level spacing here and given us just a little bit of space between each cavern. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to go to cavern layer openness, and I'm going to set this to 100. And then I'm going to say cavern layer passage density, of course, and we're going to set this to 10. And I'm going to set the passage density minimum to 10 as well. So there will be at least some kind of, open space, but there will be some guaranteed density in there. Then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to water, and I'm going to set this up to 90, up to 100. And let's see how this generates. So there is one dwarven faction in this, and they do have a population of 302 sites. So they're not completely extinct. They're kind of struggling. But we're going to give ourselves a quick embark, and maybe we can help out this faction a little bit, if not, at the very least, temporarily. So we are now embarked on a partially frozen river in a partially frozen biome, and let's do some DF hack wizardry and take a look at these caverns. So this first layer does have quite a bit of water. It's definitely kind of given us that underground lake effect. Of course, it's not completely water, but it is a whole lot of water. I'm a little bit disappointed we didn't get a more flooded spot, but turning up the water also gives you this kind of mud effect, so there is a lot of just mud everywhere. So we did more or less get the effect that we were looking for here with this underground lake, as well as some land, like I was talking about earlier. Let's go down to the next cavern layer and give it a peek. This one actually gave us a little connecting piece between the two, so we have this little cave kind of going down, and then we hit the second cavern layer. Once again, a very large, open kind of chunk of water, and also a lot of mud, which is, you know, kind of the expected result. Also, it seems like there are some angry serpent people down here already. Well, at least they're getting to it early. I do actually really like the way this cavern generated with this kind of like lower floor to it, and we should be able to work our way down to the final layer. And here is the bottom cavern. Like, ooh, this was more the effect I was hoping for. See kind of these, this very, 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 very large lake. I guess you could kind of mess around with the openness and the closed bits and try and like layer it off and make it a more consistent kind of pattern. But if anything, I do hope that this video has been helpful in you figuring out how to mess around with caverns at least a little bit. Now, if you would like to get everything back to default, that's very simple. Simply go to the link in the description. It's a link to the wiki page, world_gen.txt. Go to your Dwarf Fortress install right here, click on perfs, and then from there, you're gonna open this file up and copy the contents of right here, all of this, by clicking select all, copy pasting, and then pasting it into that folder and clicking save. I've been told you can also just delete this, but restarting the game doesn't seem to make it reappear, which makes me a little bit concerned. So I'm just gonna stick with the way I've always done it. And at the end of the day, I just want to say thank you very much, everybody, for watching. If you found this video helpful, share it with a friend. Leave a comment down in the description if you'd like to see some specific things in Advanced World Gen, and I hope to see you in the next one. Cheers.